Hey everyone, this is the Into the Future podcast at the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor. Our alma mater states, we're ever thankful for our past, and into the future we will go. That's why on this podcast, we highlight stories of light from our past to bring hope for the future. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Into the Future podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Allie, and I'm really grateful for both of our guests today. I know that you're really going to enjoy this conversation, so let's go ahead and jump in. So with us, we have Tiffany Horton. She joined the student life staff at UMHB in 2011 as the Director of Student Organizations. In the spring of 2019, she started in spiritual life as the Director of Global Outreach. She is the advisor for the Psalms Women's Conference, Missions Emphasis Week, and Global Outreach teams. She is married to AJ, and they have a son, Aiden, and a daughter, Eliana, sweet. Abby Greeson graduated in 2017. She is a mission coach for GoCorps and is married to TJ, who is also the class of 2017, and a mom to Atlas. Yay. Thank you so much for being here, both of you.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah. So we always start the podcast off the same way because our alma mater states, we're ever thankful for our past, into the future we will go. What is your favorite memory from being here on campus?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. It is hard. Over every year, it's full of memories, as I'm sure you can even tell. I think for me, it was coming here. I am a West Coast girl, and not only is there the state of Texas pride, but then there's UMHB different level. Like there's Texas pride, then UMHB purple and gold pride. And so I would just say my favorite memory was probably Abby's year. Abby being in our office, and she was one of our student workers. And we would have office outings. Like that was what we would do. And so a lot of our traditions we started in our office. And so I would say just one of the years we wanted to get matching shirts for our Christmas card for our office. And so I
forgot.
I know. I'm like, it's coming to my brain. But it was just quirky. You think awkward family photo. But we all got those. I think the campus store had Merry Christmas, y'all shirts. And so we got everybody Merry Christmas, y'all. And we made like a little Christmas tree. Like I think you might have been on top maybe.
Yeah.
And then there were just, it was a fun photo. And we sent it out to all the student orgs. But what I love about that being a favorite memory is just the people here. They do it. And as Texas and UMHB, it becomes a tradition. So each year people are like, are we getting a Christmas card from y'all?
Aw,
yeah,
that's
so I love
sweet.
that.
Yes, yeah. That's funny. I was like, I feel like I just have forgotten
There's
all
so many
of
memories.
that. Yes, there's
Yes.
so many. Like when you ask that question, like I feel the floodgates open of memories from UMHB. It was just like such a sweet season of my life. But I would have to say my favorite memory is probably so cheesy and like so cliche. You won't be surprised by this. But meeting my husband here.
Yes.
Aw,
Yes.
wait, that's sweet.
Yeah, we signed up to go on a mission trip to India with
Yes,
Tiffany. There's
yes.
a lot of connection. And I met him through signing up for that trip, and just the ways that we interacted and the memories we have together at UMHB that now have like bled into our family and created our future together is just really sweet. So it's super cheesy, but definitely meeting TJ here was like by far the best gift I could have gotten from UMHB. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that I really love about UMHB is that it's always had an emphasis on going out into the world and sharing the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. Can you share about how your job actually fits into that larger picture?
No, I love that question. UMHB, you're right. We've always had a sending of missionaries from its roots back in 1845 until even when I came on in 2011, they were partnering with Go Now missions through Texas Baptist. But what I had in me was kind of from my peripheral. Like my undergrad, they were sending about 40 mission trips a year, student-led, huge program. And so when I came here and we're sending some people, I saw that there's a missed opportunity. We have people who love Jesus and people around the world who need Jesus. So how do we do that? So as a side hustle, a side hobby, I was like, let's take some students. So we put it out there, and Abby was one of the first yes to say yes to go on a team. So we took a group of students to India. And what that would do is then after we went, people are like, are we going back? Are we going back? And so after 5 years of that, my boss looked at me and was like, do you want to do this full time? And what a dream to jump from a dream job of working with students and student activities, but also to grow this program. So back then from sending about 2 teams a year, and now we're sending about 14, both in the summer and in the winter. And it is awesome. It is beautiful.
That's super awesome. Tiffany, where are some of the places that you're sending teams out this year?
Starting in a week, we'll be going to Belize, doing some medical mission pop-up clinics. We'll also be going to Nepal. We call it Trekking with a Purpose, because we'll be going to some of the villages and bringing the good news of Christ. And also, we have 6 this summer. So of those 2, then we'll be in the Dominican, doing another medical mission. We have Montana and Canada, as well as McAllen, Texas, down near the border. So we're excited.
That's exciting. Yeah. Abby, can you share about that trip to India and how whenever you first felt the call to go on an international mission trip?
Yeah. So I would say rewind a few years to get to there. My sister is adopted from Africa, and there was something really beautiful about that the Lord, just in his grace, opened up my eyes to the world in junior high, and to the lack of the gospel and just the lack of resources that most of the world faced that I did not as a junior high kid. And so I feel like really the seed was planted then, like Abby, go, see my world, love my people like I do. So I kind of wrestled with that throughout junior high and high school. What does that look like? What would it look like to go international? So I did a lot of just short-term Texas trips in high school with my youth group. And then coming to college, really knew that the Lord had planted the nations on my heart for a reason. And so I looked for every opportunity to go, and nothing ever quite worked out. The timing never worked out, or I was late to something, or there was a lack of peace for all the trips that I had looked at my freshman year of college. And it was such a bummer because I was like, college, I'm going to go somewhere. I had come to UMHB with the purpose of being a nurse and going overseas. So everything was geared towards going. And I just kept feeling like there was closed doors until Tiffany brought up the India trip. And I remember I worked in her office and she brought it up, and I was like, India would be a really cool place to go. Lord, would you open this door? Please, I'm on hands and knees, please, this time at work. And I had conversations with Tiffany, and my parents knew Tiffany very well, and so there was a lot of distrust from my parents with Tiffany, and so a lot of prayer and just a lot of back history coming into that trip. The Lord made it super clear, this is it. This is your time to go to see my people, and to kind of start growing this seed that I've planted in you. So it was years of prayer and I think preparation that I needed, that looking back, I had no idea that I needed to get to a really easy yes to going to India.
I love that. So both of you have been on many trips then around the world.
Yeah.
Can you share how that has changed your life and it's changed your faith?
Yeah, I would say when you step out of a place that's familiar to you, you're going to be changed. It's your faith is going to be tested to even simple things of, do I like spicy things? I don't know, unless you try that. So I would say my faith has really been impacted when you see people who truly have never heard before. There was this time when I was in India, and I was in the session where we're sharing the gospel, and you can tell when people are looking at you, trying to retain, but this woman was holding my face. And she just wanted every single word. And so even though it had to be translated, it was like I knew she like saw me, I saw her, and it transformed me in such a way that even though I'm not a scholar, like I didn't go to seminary, even though all those things, but God used my heart. God used my way to just like relate with that woman. And afterwards, she told me, my whole family is Christian, but they never explained it like you just did. And so she said, I want to be a Christian now. I want to be a Christ follower. So I think it was just that reminder of how often we just assume things of people, that we don't explain things to people or invite them into things. So that changed me. That moment changed me.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I think a thought that I was thinking about to go with that a little bit was just the boldness in my own faith that I've learned by going on these short-term trips, because I've seen the faith and the obedience of the locals and the missionaries I've worked with. And so like my in-laws were missionaries for over 20 years, super great. And I remember in India, it's so funny, we keep bringing that up, but fond memories. I remember sitting in like a tuk-tuk with her, which is one of their modes of transportation. And I was in the middle, my now husband was on the left and she was on the right, and our driver was like making conversation, and I didn't know the language. My husband kind of did, and she spoke it fluent, since that's where they had been serving. And so I remember her just like having conversation with him, and just asking about his family, really nonchalant, how you would probably like a taxi driver in the States.
Yes.
And I remember her getting to this point where she just looked at him and said, like, I see all the gods you have on your like dashboard. I know them. And she's like naming them and what they stand for and really relating to this guy. And then she gets to the end of that and she's like, but I believe in one God and his name is Jesus. Can I just share about Jesus? Really short, really sweet. It was so uncomplicated. And then at the end, she just looked at him and said, and I believe in the power of prayer. I don't know if you do, but I believe that prayer works. Is there anything that I can pray for? And I remember thinking, this guy what's he going to share? Like he believes in these other gods. Why would he share with her when this isn't the same belief he holds? And he just turned around. We'd stopped at this point and gotten to where we were going. And he turns around with tears in his eyes and just looks at her and was like, yes. And I don't really remember exactly what the prayer request was, but I just remember him turning around, tears in his eyes, and sharing a very vulnerable moment with my mother-in-law, and her like touching his shoulder and saying, I will be praying, and I just want you to know, like, my God works, he moves. And we got out of the tuk-tuk, and that was it. And so like just the boldness that I've seen in her and other people I've worked with on these trips, it's just so present, which has then bled into my life here to be so bold when the Lord puts opportunities in front of me here. I've seen the boldness. So now Abby, act out of that boldness. So I think, like you were saying, my own faith has been like so impacted. And the second part to that I love, that I think UMHB students have talked to me about a little bit, is just getting to see another side of God. Like when you go to another part of the world and you see like how they worship, they're worshiping the same God, but maybe in a different language, or maybe there's different music, and maybe they dance a little bit more, but you're seeing another part of who God is. And I think that is so glorious. Like we get to see layers of who he is and who his people are, by going on these trips. So I've loved that too, as I've gone to different places, to just capture a little glimpse of who God is and what heaven will look like, to like hear the singing together. And yeah, so it's something really pretty that I think on a short-term trip, you really get to capture. It's just like, this is another side of who God is. And I get to see this on earth. And then I get to be promised that one day this will all come to fruition, which is super exciting.
I love that. I love, in my own experience, I've traveled to Honduras several times. And so one thing that I love is we sing hallelujah together while we're in church services, and it's the same word. And so no instruments, like we're all just singing hallelujah. And every single time that happens, people are like, this is heaven. This is what heaven will sound like. And so it's so neat to me. One thing I wanted to ask you is that UMHB students, there's plenty of opportunities to serve, but for one reason or another, maybe a student can't travel abroad right now. How would you encourage them to do mission work right here on this campus or in our community when they go home this summer? What's your encouragement?
I love this question. I think there's actually so many like facets of what ministry can look like and what being involved in missions can look like. And I think often, I remember I did as a student, getting really stuck on this one picture. And if I couldn't do this, then I just couldn't do anything. Like God couldn't use me, which was such a lie. And I think it was a stronghold that the enemy held on me for a while. Like, if you're not going to be a nurse, then you can't go. I believed this lie that if I didn't do this one picture, I just wasn't going to be used by God for his nations. So I would speak against that first. Like, God is so much bigger than I think this little box that we often put him in. So if a student finds himself in a place where, for whatever reasons, they can't go on a short-term trip or a long-term trip, I think something I really saw in college was the strategy behind being a college student and ministering on this campus. So there's a huge international student population on this campus, and I just totally missed it until my senior year. Had no idea. I think I was just naive, And my senior year, I was a part of Easter pageant, and I was asked to be a part of the community outreach. What is it called? Team? What do they call that? Committee. Yes. I'm like, what is the word? There's a word. Yeah. So I had been asked to kind of head up this community outreach committee, which was new. The director that year had kind of just really felt like the Lord had asked her to do more, to step out of the norm of what we had been doing. So I graciously said, yes, I would love to do this. Sounds super exciting. And I remember her saying, okay, your first project is international students. How do we get them here? How do we have them be a part of Easter pageant? And then when they're walking by, what do we do? They're coming and listening. How do we approach them? What are some strategies that we can kind of have ready in our tool belt? And so I remember thinking, I have no idea. I have little experience with international students on campus. I don't know where to find them. But through some conversations with people and just through a little bit of work, very easily the doors opened. And so I look back and think, gosh, the Lord is so strategic to plant college students on campuses where there are fellow college students coming from all over the world, places that have a lack of access to the gospel, or being a Christian isn't accepted, but they are here, in our backyard, in a place that we are comfortable. They are not. So what an opportunity the Lord's given college students to welcome these international students, to invite them into your home for a meal, to invite them to the table for coffee, even just to wave and say hi.
Yeah, absolutely. When I studied abroad this summer, if somebody would just give me a smile, I just felt so right at home.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And you don't realize how big of impact that makes.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Super cool. Okay, Tiffany, I'm curious. Somebody may be watching and thinking, I've never been a part of a mission trip. I haven't even considered mission work. I have no idea what missions is. Could you define that for us?
Great question, Allie. I think it comes down to knowing Jesus and making his name known. If we could just do that. And I think the process of whether that's being friendly to your neighbor, sitting with a person who's alone. So simple things to how do I know Jesus, but also make him known. So that's wrapped up. It's simple, but I think for people, it helps them know what exactly we're about.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'm about to ask you sort of the mission trip thing. Can you explain knowing Jesus to me super quick for our audience?
No, I love that. What does it mean to know Jesus? I think it means that just that complete surrender, that means to us where there's one God who created us from the very beginning, and that he loved us so much that when he had a precious son, and being a mom, that means that hits home. It hits home that,
yes.
that to send my son, I have one son, my son, to the world to be a living sacrifice, because that's what was needed for us who did bad things against God. We separated ourselves from God. And so the only way for us to get back to God and that one relationship is for God to send that sacrifice in his precious son. So he did that because he loved us so much. And in that, he just asked us to believe in him, that all we have to do is believe that he is God and that all things come from him. And when we do that, the freedom that comes from that, that whatever you're carrying, you're not alone in that. Whatever you're going through, you're not alone in that. and that he created us to need him. So even as Christians, even when we believe in God, we're like, God, why us? Why me? What am I doing? And he's like, you're doing it alone. Like, you're meant to need me. We're meant to need God. If we didn't need God, we wouldn't be here. So the fact that he created us, we can't even fathom that. But if we believe in him, and we will be saved. So that's my passion. That's what I believe.
That's awesome. And that's why we send people out into the world. So we go, we want others to go. So, well, we are wrapping up our conversation. I have so enjoyed getting to know both of you. Tiffany, I already know you, but talk to you more. And Abby, getting to know you. The end question we have every single time, just like I stated the alma mater earlier, what gives you hope for the future in missions?
Yeah, I can go. Hope for the future is we started post-COVID. We weren't going places, and now we have students who want to go. I see in this generation, they're ready, they're eager, and I think they're also humble. They're knowing that they don't have to know or have it all together, that they're just willing to go and make his name known. So the hope is that we have gone from 1 team to 14, and we're growing, and I just see that in this generation.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar. I find a lot of hope in this next generation. My job is sending recent college grads overseas. So a lot of who I get to work with is this next generation. And I've just seen over the last few years this obedient posture. And I think in missions, if you can just be obedient, or actually just as a believer, like all the Lord asks us for our obedience, and then he'll walk alongside us. He is with us wherever we go, and that's a promise that we can take with us. But I'm so inspired by the obedience of the candidates I work with, who are 20-something-year-olds, who are just like, Lord, I'm here, hands open, arms surrendered. Would you just show me where you want to plant me? Would you show me how you want to use me? And then as they're walking into the Lord, to watch their obedience and to see how their obedience then impacts their parents. Their obedience impacts my life. Their obedience impacts the many lives they'll touch as they go is just really inspiring. Like, all it is just obedience, which is hard. I think obedience can be really hard, but what a beautiful picture when we are in tune with the Lord, in step with him, in obedience, to watch him just go, to watch him be so faithful in that obedience. So I think I'm inspired by that. I'm encouraged by this generation that there is this posture that they're taking of obedience that I just see this trend of. And it makes my job a little bit easier and a lot of fun to just pray together about what does it look like to be really intentional with where the Lord wants to place you.
That's awesome. Thank you both so much for joining us today. I cannot wait for our listeners to hear this episode. So everyone out there, thank you for tuning in. If you are wondering how you can make an impact, I would just say to you, get connected, go on missions, and pray. Pray for these UMHB students that are going out on mission this summer. And thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Into the Future. We desire that you walk away with encouragement from the stories of hope that you heard today. As you go into your day, remember that the world needs you. You matter and God cares. As Romans 15:13 says, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit.